Good evening and salutations. I have just come back in from clubbing, as you do, because it is Friday night over here. I left the club early while my favourite songs were playing to come back and do this on time. So, special episode of Chew the Fat tonight. But before we get into it, I do want to give a shout out, bit of a sad one, really. So today we lost an actor that was a huge influence in my youth growing up. One of the, I don't know if it was the first, but one of the early treats. It might have been the second one after the $6 Million Man. For me, was to be able to stay up and watch a cop show called Starsky and Hutch, which one half of that duo was the late great David Soul, and he was in the show, I think, for all of the seasons, and of course was a successful actor in films like Magnum Force and the FBI Murders, which if you haven't seen, you should watch it. But he passed away today at the age of 80. So I don't know if Matt's a big fan of David. He may not have watched cop shows when he was younger. But here's Matthew Holmes from Down Under.
Hello. I'm afraid no, I don't. I'm not very familiar with David. I'm afraid.
Yeah, because you didn't have. I remember in your youth you did not have readily access to a TV.
No, I didn't. I grew up most of my youth and my teenage years. I didn't have we had a television, but we weren't allowed to watch broadcast television. We were only allowed to watch videotapes.
Did you ever get to see Salem's Lot?
No.
Do you know what, mate? That is a good movie. You should track down the Blu-ray of that. And
is that the old 80s film, Salem's Lot?
It's a Stephen King two-part miniseries made for TV.
Right.
Cracking.
Didn't they make another one a bit later on?
They've made 3 versions of it now.
Because I knew the production designer on one of them, but I think it was the lesser of. It wasn't the most popular one. It was like a later one.
Yeah, Rob Lowe did one. I mean, it's a fantastic film. There he is with Bonnie Bedelia from Die Hard in Salem's Lot.
I was going to say, that looks like Bonnie Bedelia.
Yeah. But I definitely recommend Salem's Lot if you've not seen it. It was probably the first big thing he did after Starsky and Hutch, I think, where he plays the guy who's kind of, trying to stop vampires from taking over the world. But him and Paul Michael Glaser, they made a fantastic cop duo. Anyone who wants to see old episodes of Starsky and Hutch, they're all on YouTube for free. Oh. Somebody's uploaded them all. But I used to watch this every Friday with my parents. So, it was kind of like a household presence almost. Plus, pretty sure my mum fancied him because he looked a bit Scandinavian. Because he had Norwegian blood. Anyway, how have you been doing, sir? Happy New Year. How was your New Year?
My New Year was very quiet.
You were in bed by 8:30 p.m., weren't you?
I was in bed very early, yeah. So it was just how I liked it. Just nice, some nice food, watching a movie, and then off to bed nice and early, yep. So I didn't go too hard. So yeah, no, it was nice. It was nice.
Mate, it's on my bucket list to spend one New Year in Sydney Harbour on one of them boats watching the fireworks display.
Yeah, that would be fun. I can't say I've ever done it, so I would not live
there. You're pretty sure you're going to be there with me when that happens.
Yeah. Never. Well, I don't live in Sydney. It's probably why I've never done that. But
no, I know. Don't worry, but we'll be flying there on my executive jet. So, a couple of comments. Dark Hair, good to see you, mate. This one gives chewing the fat a whole different meaning. You know what? I had not even thought of that.
What's that?
David Macy, Salem's Lot was scary. It was absolute. I still find that scene with the rapping on the window. Don't want to spoil it for Max. He hasn't seen it. Good God. We're going to talk about two very different films
Mm-hmm.
today. Alive, which came out in 1993. I think it was shot in 92.
Yeah, this is a 93 film, isn't it? Yeah.
And which I saw in the opening week in London.
Yeah. So this film is not. So this film is 20 years old or 30?
Hang on, 2003, 20 years old.
It's 20 years old.
No, 30 years old.
So we got 30 years old.
Yeah.
So there's three decades between this one and Society of the
Snow. Two films which cover the same topic, but I guess one is here's the story presented by Hollywood, and the other is the story presented by, shall we say, the native country, I guess.
Which is probably its biggest difference, is the fact that the actors and the filmmaker, it very much feels like it's all Chilean or whatever, Chilean people, weren't they? Yeah.
Well, I don't know, man. I think there's some other major differences between the two, but there are also a lot of similarities. But I think, you saw Society of the Snow, was it last night?
Yeah, I watched it last night, so it was very fresh. Played a lot on my mind in my sleep, actually.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting one to watch right before going to bed.
Yeah.
So, for anybody who is not up to speed with this subject, in the 1972, and this is the story of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571, which was a privately chartered plane carrying a group of, I guess you call them, it was a rugby team, wasn't it? Christian, were they called the Christians, or were they Christians? I'm not sure.
Yeah, they were. There's something Christians, yeah.
I think they were connected to like a Christian church or something along those lines.
Yeah.
They were traveling to Chile, and en route of the flight going over the Andes, the pilots lost visibility. They miscalculated where they were. That area was also notorious for air pockets and things like that. So the plane came into turbulence, struggled to regain height, crashed rather spectacularly on one of the mountain peaks. The front half of the plane detached separately, plummeted down into a snow valley and crashed, where of the 45 passengers and crew, there were a number of survivors. I think there were, like, initially, there were 33 survivors initially. That's right. But only 16 ultimately survived, and they were there for 72 days.
Yeah, absolutely incredible story.
Yeah, there's a third film actually that was made as well, not long after the accident. It's very
in the 70s.
Yeah. Did you see that one?
I've never heard of it.
It's very B movie. It's very Roger Corman. Hey, let's make a film about a plane crash in the mountains where people have to eat dead bodies to survive, and that is basically where the similarity ends. It's on YouTube to see for free. I can't remember the name of it. It's called something like Flesh or something. It's very exploitative and just like not very good. But I did check out a little bit of it just as a research. Melvin says he was alive in 1972. So was I, Melvin. One of the reasons that this topic's interesting for me is because I remember my parents talking about it. And I know that there was a big conversation about it in the house when the people were found alive. And I remember there being a conversation at the dinner table about how these people survived. And of course, the big thing is that after a certain period of time, when they also knew that the search for them had been cancelled, they'd given up finding the wreckage. They had to basically cut meat off the dead bodies in order to survive. So they had to become cannibals, effectively, of sorts. Do you think you could do that, Matt, being a vegetarian?
Well, it's funny. Nadia and I watched this last night, and we thought about it. Look, we did discuss it. I don't know if I could do it, but it really would have nothing to do with being vegetarian or vegan, because I think in situations like this is a very grey line. But I think one that in this particular case, they weren't killing anybody to do it. The people had already been killed. And so I think, and whether I could do it, well, I'm right now sitting comfortably in the, I would say no, I don't think I could, but I've never been that hungry before. So I've never been that desperate for survival. So I can only assume I'd probably do what they did. But having said that, if I died and my body was just, sitting out in the snow, I said, look, if that ever happened to you, Nadia, then for God's sake, eat me if that keeps you alive and gets you out of there. I wouldn't have any problem with someone using my body for that purpose if it kept people that I love or cared about alive. So,
yeah.
As long as they didn't kill me for that purpose, if I was already dead, then yeah.
They do go through that whole dichotomy, which is one of the really interesting things in the movie.
Yes.
Now,
yeah, and it's actually one of the reasons I didn't watch this. I'd never watched the movie Alive. I didn't see that movie in its time, and I did not see Alive until about 10 years ago.
Right.
So I avoided seeing this movie for 20 years because I knew that the cannibalism was part of the topic, and I find cannibalism a really horrible thing, and I cannot deal with it. So that's why I didn't bother watching Alive. But I finally decided, because I really loved the music from Alive by James Newton Howard, I decided to finally put my disgust of cannibalism behind me and watch the film. And actually, even though it was uncomfortable at times, I actually found I got past it pretty easily and quite enjoyed the movie.
I think the cannibalistic element in Alive is way more toned down than in Society of the Snow.
I agree. It is.
It gets a lot less screen time.
Yeah.
It's also inaccurate. Because I've read both the books that these are based on. Alive was based on the novel by Paul Piers Reed, and Society of the Snow is a way more accurate depiction of everything that happened, and I feel the tone of it is probably closer. I think you get more of a visceral and realistic experience of what it probably would have been like, whereas Alive, still a very good film, is more of a Hollywood-esque, because those moments of positivity in Alive are underscored by that beautiful music. It is an amazing score. So those moments are very uplifting. The humor in Alive is, I think it's more rubber stamped, like the things like today is also my birthday, and then there's that scene with the cigarette in the snow being given to that guy for his birthday, and
it's an older film, isn't it? Like, you get the sense that Alive was of a different time, was made with a different sentiment in a different time in Hollywood.
For sure.
Yeah, the first thing I I thought after Society of the Snow was that it was a much more visceral, a far
Yeah.
more visceral, far more gritty. And if you were to say which one felt more realistic or which one felt more, not knowing anything about the story really,
Mm.
I would say Society of the Snow probably lands better, as far as giving you the visceral experience and the real trauma of being in that situation, a lot more than Alive does.
Yeah.
However, at the same time, though, I felt when I was watching Society of the Snow that I'd seen this movie before. It was
Right.
still similar enough that I felt like I was watching Alive again, but in a different language.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because my memory of Alive is quite faded now. I only really have a sense of what I watched. So watching Society of the Snow, it was like watching Alive again with a few extra, like an extended version with a few more bonus scenes, a bit more grittiness, but in proper language with subtitles.
Right.
They felt very similar to each other.
It's funny, isn't it, that one of the producers on Alive was Kathleen Kennedy.
That's because it was her husband that directed it, right?
It was the late Frank Marshall.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. No.
Oh no, he's still alive.
He's still alive, but Frank Marshall is her husband.
Right. Okay.
Because yeah,
You
Kathleen
don't
Kennedy
see them together at many events, do you?
No, Kathleen
No.
Kennedy just got coffee for the right people in the beginnings of the industry and worked her way up. But well, look, there's a lot of actually really good films that Kathleen Kennedy's got her name on.
Yeah, true.
Prior to her taking over Lucasfilm, she was actually on some good films producing, but you can tell she wasn't driving them. It's only once she got in the driver's seat of Lucasfilm did her career become so soured.
Well, let's talk about. Well, I think we're going to talk about the films in tandem rather than one after the other. So if we pick on, I think each different aspect to the production and explore that.
Yeah.
So maybe.
Well, what would you give? Well, what would you give Alive out of 10? What would you give Society? Well, you want to do that at the end?
Let's do that at the end.
All right.
Of course we're interested to hear from people in the chat. If you've seen both films, let us know. If you were stranded in the mountains of the Andes, could you eat the human remains of someone else to stay alive? We're not talking about cooking them as you go, but we are talking about someone who is deceased, as it were. I think we should talk about. Let's start off with the script. There are some fundamental differences. Alive is introduced by an adult character who is essentially our narrator, but only narrates the beginning and the ending of the movie, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, and wasn't it
John Malkovich?
Malkovich, yeah. And he's sort of in shadow.
Yeah, he's half in shadow, smoking a cigarette. It's very semi-spiritual, but also quite moody, quite cryptic. Because I always remember the last line of the movie. I always remember him saying, "There's really nothing more I can tell you." And it's like he's being interviewed by someone. And I think the take on it is that's supposed to be him being interviewed by Piers Paul Reed for the book.
Right.
I'm not sure which character John Malkovich is supposed to be. I don't think he's the older version of Ethan Hawke's.
No, isn't he the older version of the dude who basically does the crosses over the mountains?
Older Carlitos, he is.
Yeah.
No, the two that cross over the mountain are Nando Parado and Roberto Canessa. Carlitos, well, I think is I think on the Alive poster, he's the guy on the right. I think that's Carlitos. So he's not one of the ones who climbs out. So you have that book ending. We also have a narrator in Society of the Snow.
Yes, but it goes pretty much all the way through the film.
Pretty much all the way through the film until getting into spoilers now. So mute us if until that narrator actually dies.
But that narrator does keep going. He does come back.
He does come back almost like a ghost.
Yeah.
But he takes us through to the point that he passes away. Keith E stopping in to say hello to you, Matt. Good to see you again. Of course it is. Always good to have Matt on the show.
Hello, Keith.
Thank you, David Macy. It was called Survive, the 1976 movie.
Right. Only terrible. 4 years after the real event.
Right. A bit too close on it. But that narration aside, that was interesting because I remembered, hang on, there's one more character that dies. I remember thinking that because after the two guys that die in the stretchers, I always remember there was one more person that died after that. And somebody comes out and says Raphael's dead or something like that. So I kind of started thinking, oh, shit, is this that guy?
Yeah. I guess you don't expect him to be the person that dies because he's the narrator.
Yeah.
Which was interesting, I guess, a creative choice, but helps with you, being, it's a bit of a surprise, I suppose, as you're watching it. You go, I didn't expect he'd die because he's been narrating this.
Other differences in the script, I would say that there's, with Society of the Snow, we get at least 10 minutes before they board the plane.
Yes, which I've got something to say about that.
I liked that, actually. There was a bit more setup, and I liked...
it did have more setup, and I think, definitely. But go on.
I think that helped us, because there's a lot of characters.
Yes.
And I think that helped us remember who some of them were, at least. And it helped that we flashed back to those moments when some of them died. So we go, okay, that's that guy. Because once they all start growing beards and look a bit messy, some of them become fairly indistinguishable from one another, or it's difficult to remember who was who when they looked all clean shaven and kind of were in rugby mode, as it were.
Yeah, that's right.
There's also more emotional stakes added with that setup because you've got that moment where you realize that actually various members of the rugby team are trying to talk family members and friends into coming on the flight with them.
That's
because
right,
that will reduce the cost for the rest of the team.
Yeah.
So imagine the emotional guilt that comes with talking somebody onto the plane who then subsequently dies. That element's not covered in Alive at all.
No,
we know there are family members there, but we don't know the circumstances around how they came to be on the plane.
No, I think, but Alive only runs 2 hours. Society of the Snow runs nearly 2.5. It's quite a long movie.
It's got a longer running time to play with. Sure.
Yeah, and that's why they can add. And I think I would go as far as to say, for me, I found the first 10 minutes of this film really, really jarring. Really jarring. I agree that it was the right thing to do, was to set up these characters, give us the backstory, and let us know who they are. I just don't think they did it enough, because it was like they were just trying to just speed race through this introduction of everybody and get to the crash. And that was, to me, the wrong way to go, because the editing in those first 10 minutes was so fast. There was not a single shot lasted longer than 3 seconds. And I couldn't keep up with who was who, what was what. I couldn't get a sense of the place. or the people or the tone. It was just this barrage of just people talking and things happening and cut. I actually found it. I actually turned to Nadia and I said, I am completely jarred by this editing and I cannot focus on this film. And she said, yeah, I feel the same. Once they crashed and once the film like started in the snow, then it was fine. And the movie actually got better and better and better and better. But for me, the first 10 minutes, you either needed to throw them in completely and start with a crash or do it properly. Start it properly and let us sit with these characters. And then we'd get to know them more and we'd get more familiar with them, that when the crash happens, we now know who everybody is.
Yeah, and we're even a bit more invested. I think
I would borrow 10 minutes from all the snow stuff and the crash and borrow 10 minutes from there and put 10 more minutes into the front of the film and don't have them crash. Have them crash 10 minutes later because we all know it's coming. You know, it's not like one of those films where you go, I don't know anything about this film. It's just a brand new invented movie. What's the story? Like, get on with it. Like, but we all know we're watching this movie because the crash is coming. It's like Titanic, you know. We know the iceberg.
We know the ship's going to sink.
We know the ship's going to sink, so we don't have to worry about that. So I think they did the movie a disservice by rushing through that opening. They should have given us more time. And it also, to me, as from a director's perspective, I find so many films are edited too fast. It's just cut. I actually started counting the cuts at a certain point. I tuned out and I just started going to prove my point. I just started counting every time there was a cut. I started counting 1, 2, and I never got to 3. It was every shot was about 1.5 to 2.5 seconds long.
Right,
and it was just.
Damn.
But it makes sense because this is a Netflix film. And one of the reasons Netflix did not take the cost is because they said the first 10 minutes was too slow.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate. I agree. I mean, I like the fact that we had the stuff that we didn't get in Alive, because in Alive we're the opening shot really after Malkovich is we're straight on the plane and the plane is kind of soaring into the mountains. I liked it, but it was rushed. I would agree. I think another between 7 to 10 minutes of that and 7 minutes off of snowstorms. I wouldn't cut anything out of the last 30 minutes of the film. But I think some of the fat.
I think the last 30 was great.
Yeah,
the film gets better. I think the film gets more and more engaging the longer it goes.
Yeah,
but I think some of the sitting around in the snow or sitting inside, huddled inside the thing, you could have just shaved and borrowed your 7 to 10 minutes and put it up front.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, the other differences in the script is one is in the English language, although the American version does do a pretty good job of making everybody look like they are South American native.
But I really like seeing it in native language, though. Much preferred it. It did feel so much more authentic.
I agree. Everybody was cast very well. We'll get onto the cast in a bit. There was a lot of care in society to completely replicate shots as they from photographs.
Yes, they did a good job of that.
Now, I know Live did that as well, but Society was way closer. And if you look at this still that I've got up right now, that is a recreation of the footage shot from the helicopter that arrived to find the survivors, of course. And they did a couple of those things more accurately. So Nando was the only one who went in the helicopter. Canessa did not go with him. But in Alive, when the helicopters arrived, both Nando and Canessa are on board,
that's the more Hollywood thing to do.
Yeah.
But I guess that's what really separates the two movies is you get Alive, I think, still captures the spirit and captures what it must have felt like. But Society of the Snow really is much more faithful, almost to the point
Yeah.
of almost being not documentary, because it's not, but it has more of that feel of you're actually watching these things play out as it would have.
I would have also liked to have seen. I could have quite happily had another 10 minutes at the end on the reaction to the general public finding out that they had to eat the dead bodies to survive, because at the beginning of all of that, they didn't tell anybody. And then they said they survived on nuts and berries and this sort of nonsense. And then eventually word started leaking out. And so I think there was a press conference where they talked about it. But there was also that very strange mania. Like, I remember reading in one of the books, how odd it was for Nando to have some woman come rushing up to him in the hospital with her baby, newborn baby, in her arms, and fostering the baby upon him and wanting him to touch the baby because it was called the Miracle of the Andes. It was a miracle that they were all alive, and everybody sort of seemed to want a piece of that miracle passed on to them.
Wow.
I thought they covered that quite well, which
Yeah.
isn't in Alive at all.
No, you did get that the coda at the end where you show them all returning to the hospital and being washed and but also just seeing the trauma that they can't just go back to being in real life.
Yeah.
Like looking out the windows, they still see the snowstorms outside of their windows, and they're all sort of huddled together still. And I thought Society captured that a lot better.
Yeah.
The trauma of it. Alive was a bit more hopeful, and then the music swells, beautiful music, but the music swells and we're all going to be okay. Whereas I think Society gets a bit further down into the psyche.
Yeah.
It also deals with the should we not eat people moral dilemma. It teases that better and really does show you the struggle that they had to do it.
Yeah. Also, another slight change in the Disney-esque version is you see everybody queuing up to cut meat off of a body who commits to doing it, whereas in Society of the Snow, those two cousins took responsibility for doing that so that the rest of them wouldn't know whose body parts they were eating.
Yes, and I think that's the smart thing to do. It's almost like the people who are strong enough to do that did that, and they even made a point of that in the movie by when that guy makes the speech going, "I love that you're strong and you do this, and they're strong enough to do this for us, so we don't have to know," and all this. And I think that's
a good speech. That's a good speech. That's a good scene.
Yeah, definitely. So I think Society is the better telling of this story ultimately.
Yeah.
Definitely. Even with the first 10 minutes, a hodgepodge of a mess. Once that plane crashes, Society is really the better version of this story.
Yeah, I mean, it's more accurate.
But even so, to give Alive its due, considering it's 30 years old,
yeah,
if you look at Society and Alive, Alive to me was made, is still an amazing production because they didn't have the advantages of CGI that Society had to make this, with all of the volume screen and the digital mountains that they could have put in the background. Alive didn't have that. They had to do it, for real as much as possible, and it's pretty amazing, Alive, from that perspective when you consider how old it is and without the digital aid that Society had. So I think we've still got to really take our hats off to Alive for being as good as it was.
No, yeah. I mean, they are both. When I first saw Alive, I'll never forget the plane crash. It was the most realistic plane crash I'd ever seen. And then
Yeah,
not
and
only
the visual effects still hold up pretty
they
damn
do,
well.
and you had those moments.
In fact, I'd say
Yeah,
they're equal to Society's Plane Crash. I think there's an equality to both of those
yeah,
scenes.
yeah. Both, I think, both of them are. The Alive plane crash is probably slightly more cinematic,
Yeah,
because you've got that sequence where one guy who was standing up and didn't put his seatbelt on, he goes flying out the back of the plane. Then there's two sections of seats that break away one after the other that also go flying out the back of the plane. And then it gets to the next person, and that person's like thinking, "Shit, my seat's going to go next," and that's all like extremely well done. That bit
yeah,
is in Society is a lot quicker, and it really
yeah,
is. The plane just breaks in half. Everyone in the back goes flying out. Everyone in the front goes plowing down the hill. But
yeah,
both are still extremely well done. I mean, very well done.
yeah. And
I think,
because it was all done with miniatures and models and mostly probably in camera or opticals, it's pretty Alive is amazing.
yeah.
I did notice though, like in Society of the Snow, probably most people won't, but I was watching it going, okay, I'm looking at digital mountains, I'm looking at digital snow. This is a digital shot. Like this is, they're extending things digitally, but it was still very convincing. But I could tell that's what it was. And this isn't. They're not really up on that mountain most of the time. Sometimes they are, but sometimes I was like, no, you're not really there. And I think that kind of took me out of it. But I don't
Um,
remember getting as many of those feelings watching Alive because I think they
well,
did have to go up to mountains and film in Alive.
let's have a look. In Society, principal photography took place in the Sierra Nevada,
Well,
Spain.
I actually watched a behind the scenes video of straight after watching Society. I watched on YouTube. There is actually a behind the scenes, and
Oh yeah,
they did some actually at the crash site
yeah,
where
I
the crash
saw
happened.
that. Yeah,
But they also did a lot of it on on a sound stage, and they also did some in a volume screen.
right,
So
right.
they were mixing their mediums a lot,
Okay.
which was
Uh,
effective, but I still felt sometimes, okay, that's not right, quite real. But look, I know it's fine because you don't want to go filming. It's much easier to not make a movie on top of a mountain.
Well, yes, indeed.
if you
I
could
wonder
do it
how
in
many
this,
days. How many days were they at the actual crash site? I wonder.
not sure, not sure, but it was Society of the Snow had a massive budget.
Yeah, it was
It's 60 million
60
euro.
million. 60 million. Yeah,
So what's euro in
that's probably about 50 million pounds.
euro to USD? Okay, so we're 60 million. Wow, that's $65 million. That's a very healthy budget.
Yeah, I
This
mean,
is like the mid-range budget, isn't it? This is like a mid-range
or
budget.
or it's one producer's salary on a Marvel film.
That's right. But I tell you what I did really like about Society of the Snow, and I thought was really effective, is that they didn't use famous people. They didn't use
No,
names in the cast, and what that really allowed you to do was suspend your disbelief and actually believe that you're seeing the people because you
yeah,
couldn't attach these people to any other movie.
individuals you knew.
Yeah, which is I think helps the audience in a true story setting get past the fact that I'm watching it. Whereas I'm watching a movie, whereas Alive is filled with familiar faces.
Well, let's start by talking about the cast, and we'll start with Society first. But here's one question I have: in Alive, one of the characters that survives and then subsequently dies in the avalanche is Fragger the mechanic, played by Yosei Zuniga. Now, the mechanic is not the same person as the purser who's kind of on the steward who's on the plane with them. And the mechanic is not a passenger. So he's probably in the jump seat near the cockpit, or I think they find him in the bathroom near the cockpit. Because if you remember, he sort of pops out of nowhere. They kind of discover him, and he's crazy in Alive the whole way through. That character is not even in Society of the Snow.
I don't remember him in Society of the Snow at all.
No, he's not represented. He may be.
Was he there in the real event though?
That I don't know. He may well be some sort of fictional amalgamation, maybe.
Yeah.
Let me actually. I'll have a look. And see.
I didn't realize is Danny Nucci in Alive?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Wow, I forgot he was in Alive.
Yeah. So
I remember Jack
Josh
Noseworthy.
Hamilton.
Remember Josh? I remember Jack Noseworthy. I always liked Jack Noseworthy in Breakdown.
Yeah, he's very creepy in Breakdown.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
he's good in U571 as well.
The ones who also in Alive, there are that's right, there are 2 pilots. In Society of the Snow, we only see one, but the reality was there was a pilot and a co-pilot. The pilot died pretty soon after the crash. The co-pilot died the following day. So there were...
I got the feeling there was 2 pilots, but one of them was killed on impact and the other one dies like the next day. That's what I remember from Society.
Right. I just you didn't really see.
You didn't see the other guy, but I think half of the cabin was crushed or smashed, and that pilot was gone or buried or dead or something. It was a bit obscure.
Looking at what I can see in oh right, yeah, the aircraft mechanic Carlos Roque, Sergeant Carlos Roque, was on the plane and was killed in the avalanche. He's just not in the film at all.
There was a lot of people killed in the avalanche, though, in Society. I remember that because the night they bring up the little subtitle every time someone dies. They bring up a little.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think they did mention him,
but we never really got into his character, or we never really knew what his role on the plane was.
Yeah,
but that's the thing, like you said, because they're unknown actors. And they're all getting bearded, and they all kind of have a similar look. It is actually hard to start picking out who's who.
Yeah,
they all become a bit of an ensemble mass of people. You don't really know who they are.
And Coco, who's sort of slightly mixed race, hence why his nickname's Coco, I guess. He's killed in the avalanche just as we get to know him. This is a really outstanding cast, though.
I thought they were really good. I thought they were I didn't feel their acting was bad. I thought everyone did a really good job. It all just came across very real, and I guess that's the difference between this and Alive. Is Alive feels more like, hey, we're all Hollywood actors and we're acting well, but it's still more of a movie. Whereas Society feels a bit more immediate, feels a bit more realistic, a bit more grounded. Dialogue is a bit more natural, and it's almost like the dramatized documentary version of the story. And Alive is the big Hollywood spit polished, carefully thought out, well-rounded 2-hour package for the masses. Society for the Snow is the gritty, ballsy, or bordering on a documentary kind of version of it.
Yeah. I thought that Augustin Padilla, who played Nando, was really good.
Yep, it was good.
And I found his interpretation and Ethan Hawke's interpretation, despite them obviously being in different languages, of their characters to be extremely similar. And that's a That's a compliment, not a criticism.
Well, they're obviously trying to get the character. They obviously were getting the character of the man correct.
Yeah, and I mean, their performances, of course, are different, but I think they both nailed him tonally. They both nailed him the same way, and that's absolutely fine. But the character of Roberto Canessa, who Matthias Ricault plays, is very different from the version played by the guy in Alive, who is a great actor, Josh Hamilton. I really like Josh Hamilton.
Oh, wow. Yeah, very different. Very different.
I call Josh Hamilton the American Danny Webb because he does look a bit like Danny. But yeah, they do play them because you have that scene in Alive where Ethan Hawke keeps saying, right, we've got to go now. And Josh Hamilton says, the bag's not ready. And he kind of kicks off. And we do see that, I guess, when Matthias like rips it, but it's not done in the same way.
No.
And then you have that scene where after the last person to pass away, Numa, dies on the 11th of December, he says, right, we're going tomorrow. And that's not in Alive, that moment. So there's these subtle differences. I feel the interpretation of the characters is probably a lot closer to the real people in this version, as it should be, because it's
it definitely feels like they've taken the time to get it more accurate and to get it more to get it to the place of real accuracy. So I think if you're into accuracy, go with Society. If you want perhaps a more palatable, digestible, easy to watch version of the story, watch Alive. You'll still get the same story, but you'll get the more palatable version Alive. I actually didn't like the character of Roberto to begin with in the beginning of the movie. I didn't like his character.
No, he has a really good arc.
Yeah, he goes from being quite almost the character that you dislike, who's so quick to want to, dismember the bodies and everything and eat them, but he ends up being one of the leaders, one of the strongest. So he was good. I thought Enns, the guy who plays Numa, the narrator, he really reminded me of it was like watching the the Chilean discount version of Adam Driver.
Man, don't make me laugh. But yeah, I mean, look at this photo. This photo is
honestly,
look at this. This is very Adam Driver right here.
It is. It was like it's your discount Chilean Adam Driver.
He was good though.
He was good. He was good, but to look at, it was like watching Adam Driver in this movie. And if you were to cast this movie with an American cast, you just know that Adam Driver would be playing that role.
It's almost here like the makeup team are going, yes, quick, make his hair more Adam Driver like.
Yeah, because we might be able to fool someone who goes, "Oh, there's a new Adam Driver film on Netflix. Let's watch that."
Now that must be where they're filming there. That's got to be at the location of the crash.
No, that would be, because that's a behind the scenes still.
Yeah.
But I heard that the problem that they had was at the actual crash site, there was not enough snow. So they had to
because of the time of year that they were filming.
Yeah, so they had to digitally extend and add more snow later on.
Right.
But look, props to them for going to the crash site. I mean, I take my hat off to them. That's great. It shows their commitment to getting it right, and I think this is where there's a lot of this director, J.A. Bayona. I think this is definitely, of the films of his I have seen, this is his best film.
What else have you seen? What else have you seen of his?
He did two of the first. He did the two first episodes of the Rings of Power.
Oh dear.
He did Jurassic World 2. He did. I think he did the Impossible with Ewan McGregor about the wave.
Now that is a really good film about the tsunami. That's a really good movie.
That is good. And I think this one, this is his wheelhouse. I think realistic tragedies, exciting, tense, realistic. This is his bag. I think he works well in this space.
Well, he probably does the the big blockbuster NAF films in order so that he can get these ones financed, I reckon.
Quite possibly. But he does a naff job of those naff films. So, but this one, I thought it was restrained. It was realistic. It was honoring these. I think Alive. I can't accuse Alive of not honoring the real people, because I think it does. But I think this one, Society, honors the real people. You can tell there's such a reverence for the people who died, the people who survived, and to get their story told very genuinely and very realistically. I think that comes through in Society very strongly. A real sense of honoring what happened.
Well, we're diversifying from discussing the cast a little bit, so let's talk about the American cast now. I think this is a very well cast film.
Oh yeah, for its time, it had a terrific cast.
Yeah, Ethan Hawke, of course, was the big name. There are several other people in it who are bigger names now, but at the time, that they were not that big. So, Danny Newsey was a practical unknown. Vincent Spano, who's done quite a bit now, also practically unknown. Kevin Bresnan, who plays Roy Harley, I know, I'm going to say this, the real Roy Harley was proper pissed off with his portrayal in Alive. Right. And and they addressed that with Society, because if you remember when they walk up to try and sort the radio out.
Yep.
There's a voiceover line that says Roy Harley didn't want to go, but he went because he went to see if he could help the rest of us.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say that he complained all the way and all the rest of it. Whereas in Alive, they cast the actor well. He created a really good character, and he's whinging the whole way there. And then on the way back, he collapses, and Ethan Hawke has to carry him. And that's a big evocative moment with music and all that. We don't even see that scene, so I don't even know if that really happened.
Yeah.
But Kevin Bresnan does a great job as Roy, but I think the other depiction of Roy is probably a lot more realistic. I liked Bruce Ramsey, this actor in the middle here. I thought he was a good actor. He really stood out in the film for me. John Newton plays Tintin.
I tell you one thing that I did really feel that Alive captured over that Society got better than Alive was really the sense of isolation. That how small they were in the mountains.
Well, there was that great scene where they're walking up the mountain to try and find the tail, and the guy turns around and says, "Look, you can't see the plane from here."
That's right. So how could they see it from there?
They didn't have that in Alive.
No, and that really gives. And I think with the CGI, you can do bigger like drone shots and stuff. You've really, really got the sense of how isolated they were in the Andes and how they just couldn't be found. Whereas in Alive, it just felt a little bit smaller. But Alive is one of those films that I really want in my collection. I haven't been able to find a copy of it yet on Blu-ray, but
I'll keep an eye out for you.
It's not really been a readily available film for some reason, but I would happily have Alive and Society in my collection side by side. I think
me too.
They're both worthy, but they're both just a little bit different. But it is interesting to put two well-made films of the same subject matter and put them side by side and just see how different filmmakers handle different things.
Yeah.
How different music creates different feelings and different effects, But I think for its time, Alive was very good.
Oh no, I'd agree. Hey, both films are worthy, but only one of them is Jack Noseworthy. See what I did there?
I see what you did there.
Yeah. I mean, excuse my coughing, everyone. Still spluttering here. Yeah, the cast in this are really good. Vincent Spano is a little bit who plays the captain of the team. His character is a little bit over the top. It's really interesting that that same character in Society of the Snow is nothing like Vincent Spano's performance. He's much more reserved, saying
Yeah.
rallying them occasionally, but no
Yeah, and he
big
looks a lot
speeches.
different.
There
No,
isn't. That's a number of things that they handled differently. Like there wasn't that line where he went, "Am I the leader of this group?" And then there also wasn't that moment where everybody suddenly ate all the food because they thought the plane dipped its wing. That did really happen. Instead of showing that in Society, just said they're nearly out of food now. So I guess that was more dramatic in Alive the way they did it, but maybe it was more
I think they were
realistic.
probably, I think Alive was trying to, for the sake of interest, keeping people interested, they're ratcheting up the stakes of the drama, so it's a bit more traditional.
Yeah.
They're archetyping the characters a bit more, but Society doesn't. I think wisely doesn't fall into that trap.
David Kriegel, who played the guy on the right here, this is near the end of the film. His costume with that kind, I think he took the captain's hat or whatever, ended up wearing it. If you look at the photographs, and of course in Society, the guy's got a very similar costume. Their costumes are so accurate to what the guy actually ended up wearing. And David Kriegel's playing Gustavo. He's a retired actor now. He's not acting anymore. He stopped in 2005. Be interesting to see if we could get him on to talk about this film. I'd love to. It would be really great is to get one cast member from each movie.
Oh yeah,
and do a stream. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
especially if they played the same character.
Yeah. Oh, you couldn't make that interview on Monday week when I'm interviewing that director of Malbat.
Yeah.
But Jason Fleming is co-hosting that interview with me.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so he stood in for you.
Oh, good on you, Jason. Oh, they're going to get Jason Fleming on there. That's a lot more exciting than me. So,
do you like Jack Noseworthy in this film?
I think again, like I said, it's been a while, but I remember liking him. I like Jack Noseworthy in most things. I don't think I've ever seen a movie with Jack Noseworthy where I haven't liked him as an actor. I've always thought he should probably get more roles than he should, but I think him being an openly gay actor has not made his career path easy, which I think I didn't
know he was gay actually. When did he come out?
He's been out always. I think he's been out pretty much since the beginning, and I think that's one of the reasons why his career has been quite
well. Difficult. I can tell you a Jack Noseworthy story, which was that a friend of mine who was in U571 with him.
Oh yeah,
and he was playing a bit part. And one day they got collected by the same driver. Drivers go round to different hotels, pick up 3 or 4 actors, take them to the set. So he ended up in the car with Jack Noseworthy, and my friend was making small talk with him, and it just said, "So, how many times did you have to audition to get the role? How many times did you get seen?" And Jack looked him up and down and said, and went to him, "What makes you think I had to audition at all?" And I thought, "Oh, that's such a bell end thing to say."
Well, I can tell you why he doesn't need to audition. It's because Jonathan Mostow puts him in everything he does.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that, but it's not like my actor friend would have known that, though, was it?
No, that's right.
Yeah.
No, it was a bit of a bell end thing to say. How about, oh, well, actually, no, I didn't have to audition because The director knows how good I am.
Yeah, well, the director worked with me before on blah blah, and
Yeah,
called me up and asked me if I wanted to do the part.
yeah,
So yeah, so I always remember about Jack Noseworthy. He's the first one out of the plane, and when the next guy comes out, he's like sitting on his suitcase and he's already lit up a fag.
yeah.
Always thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean the cast for Alive are very committed. I forgot that Josh Lucas was in
I
the
thought
film.
that was Josh Lucas.
Yeah,
Gee,
he gets killed pretty quick. I think he
Right.
dies because he gets wounded and then he dies like a day or two later while
Right.
Nando's still passed out.
I think what society also does better is really getting that sense of how emaciated and thin and gaunt everyone starts getting, how unhealthy everyone starts getting.
Especially in that shower scene at the end.
Yeah, it's horrible. But just seeing their physical deterioration is much stronger in society than Alive.
Yeah, like that shot where the guy reaches out and touches the teeth of one of the guys in the
and
his teeth are wobbling, and it's like
yeah,
ugh.
yeah. It gets that a lot better.
I thought that one thing I thought that Live did better. Interesting that we're on this still. Is I felt the relationship and the connection and the love that Nando had for his sister in Alive was stronger.
Yeah,
Because they gave them a bit of interaction and a bit of dialogue when she was still alive.
yes, that did come through stronger in Alive. Definitely,
Yeah.
she was almost an afterthought in society. Like she's there, but she's basically more or less comatose from the crash onwards. There's nothing.
Maybe that was what actually happened, but I think that she was in and out of consciousness from what I remember of the book.
Right.
But I mean, this is interesting because, of course, none of these shots are green screen or anything.
Yeah. Can you remind me, because it's been such a long time since I've seen Alive, did all the cast talk in American accents or did they talk in Chilean accents?
No, some of them spoke in a sort of vaguely Chilean accent.
Right.
And the more American cast, what they did was they kind of dumbed down their accents and kind of went for a sort of neutral RP.
Right.
So that they
See, because one thing that Alive didn't really sink in with my head was that these were South American Chilean people. Because they're Americans mostly, you feel like Alive is about a bunch of Americans trapped in the mountains because they're American actors. And that did the film a disservice, whereas Society, being in the language, so much better.
Jay Diabolical Souls, who interviewed me on his channel the other day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Netflix,
he bought a copy of my 1988 book, and it really emotionally moved him.
Good.
So Matt's copy is on his way to him soon, isn't it, Matt?
What's that?
My book, 1988.
Yeah, I've already got a copy.
Yeah, well, exactly. I think I gave you one for Christmas, didn't I, or something? Or...
No, you gave me one when I was in
yeah,
when I came to the UK. You gave me an advance copy.
Advanced Christmas present.
Exactly. So yeah, I've already got mine.
Yeah, well, he got one and read it, and he found it like profoundly moving. So
good on you, Jay. Absolutely.
But we spotted that the Running Man review is missing. So I've got to jump all over that when I finish this.
Right.
So yeah,
he's asking, where do you watch Society? Jay,
Netflix.
You watched it on Netflix. It dropped on Netflix yesterday.
Yeah. So I mean, cast. I think all of the cast in both films are good.
Yep.
These two actors are great in Alive, and the two actors that play these same roles are great in Society. They don't quite give them the power bonding moments that Alive gives them, but it feels more realistic, I think, in Society. I mean, the bit where Jake Carpenter, or is it Christian? I'm not sure which, says, God, I'm I'm crying because I'm so close to God, which is that bit's really moving. Yeah, there we go. There's the crew.
That's the crew of Alive, right?
Yeah, and I'm guessing that must be. I don't know if that's on location or if that's on a set.
That looks like a studio.
Yeah, it does look like a studio shot, doesn't it?
The lighting looks like studio. So
because the real Nando was technical advisor on Alive.
Right.
He was on the whole thing. So that's cast and crew of Alive. That's quite a nice photo, that. And I guess there's some production. Oh, hey, super chats come in. Got here from Drinker. Greetings from Switzerland. Thank you very much, Tatsu Sama. Welcome to the channel. This is an episode of Chew the Fat. If you search on the channel, there's a few others. I've done a lot of them with Matthew Holmes, who's a film director from Australia. You want to check out his films, especially The Cost. You can see he's wearing a hat for it right now. And Matthew and I often talk about favorite films of ours in depth, and we're doing 2 of those tonight. And that's all.
And we like especially to compare films of, because we've done quite a few comparisons of the same titles now. We've done the 2 Robin Hoods, we've done the 2 Wyatt Earps. Yeah, we tend to find movies with similar themes and stories.
Yeah, or similar genres. We did We Were Soldiers and Black Hawk Down together.
Yeah. To see, it's always nice to compare and contrast the.
But Tatsu, also check out the industry interviews section, mate. You'll find that very interesting. There's a whole load of interviews with people from the industry, including one of the actors from House of the Dragon. I've got various other actors on there. Loads of really interesting crew with really interesting stories. Check out the interview with Gary. No, hang on. Dennis Maguire. I nearly said Gary Maguire. He was the first AD on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, among many other films. We just interviewed him the other day. Fantastic interview. So, 30th anniversary, Matt, for $7 on DVD. Matt only likes Blu-rays, though, Keith.
I only buy Blu-rays. DVDs are, to me, a dead format. They're
of the past.
They're standard definition. And the only way you can get Alive, from what I can discover, is if you buy an edition from, which country is this? It's definitely not English. It looks Viven. Okay, it looks like it's Spanish or Mexican or something like that. Yeah, looks like it's a Spanish version of the film.
Would that not have
Espanol? Yeah,
it's switched to English, or
it does have English. It does have English, so you could watch it in English. Yes, but it looks like it is a Spanish version of the film.
So you'll have it with a Spanish cover, basically.
Yeah, exactly. But it does come with the documentary and has subtitles and everything, and you can get it for about it would set me back $60 Australian to buy that from the US.
You're committing there. Okay, let's talk about some other elements of the 2 films now. Let's move on to music. So you've got the score from Alive from James Newton Howard.
Yes, I'm a big James Newton Howard fan, and I would love the score even before I saw the movie. And I think it's still one of Newton Howard's, best and wonderful scores. I could
hum the main theme right now, and that's the difference between, for me, a good score always has that signature theme.
Yeah.
That you remember, and for Alive, it's that na 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 na, and then it goes higher, and always remember that track. And then they do the slow piano version of it, which for the more peaceful moments. Very cinematic, very Hollywood of the time.
It's a very Hollywood score, but it is beautiful. It's thematic. It's melodic.
We miss those scores. We really fucking do.
Society of the Snow. I was surprised to see it was Michael Giacchino. He's doing a lot these days. He does a lot of J.J. Abrams films. He did the new Batman. He does The Incredibles. He's a pretty good composer, but
very restrained score.
Very restrained again. But I think that's because they want it to go more with the, I guess, the tone of this kind of. It's more like a documentary, so they don't want to overemphasize.
No, and I think it works fine.
I grew to like it as the movie went on. I appreciated the score more. At the beginning, it was almost a non-thing. It was like, yeah, whatever. This music is just
the music in the film in Society increases.
Yes.
It becomes more present as the film goes on.
And towards the end, I found it quite. Quite touching.
Wow! Look, he did Up. He did the score for Rogue One. The score for Rogue One's great.
I think he's a good composer, and I think probably this is one of his more restrained scores. And I think by the time you reach the end, it does have a nice little piano piece, and it's quite lovely. But it's not the kind of bombastic music swelling. I think.
Wow! What a resume!
It's huge. Yeah. I think what old scores did that modern scores don't is that I think modern scores fill in the blanks for the lack of visual spectacle that they couldn't produce back in those days. So they couldn't show you the vast mountains and everything because they didn't have the budget to do that. So music kind of filled in the blanks a bit in older movies. It emotionally filled in the blanks.
Yeah,
I think they're both different. I think the music scores are like the films. They're both excellent in their own way, but they are so different because they approach the material from a different kind of attitude.
I was glad that they didn't do. I was worried that Society of the Snow was kind of going to do that Hans Zimmer style where they lean into production sound design.
Oh, yeah.
And no, they didn't do that. You can't tell where music ends and sound design begins. And I know for some stuff that can work and can be very effective, but it is a trend at the minute that we see more and more of. And I'm not sure how much of that I want in every movie, No,
it's a very modern thing. I tell you what, just to jump away from music, it's something that you just said reminded me of what I thought Society, where this is clever directing from the guy, and unlike his Jurassic World piece of garbage.
Well, God, I mean, that film was terrible.
Yeah. What I thought was really interesting is, like, for example, the avalanche, when they're just sitting there and the thing starts shaking and then
that was really good.
Yeah. You didn't have the God shot outside seeing the big avalanche coming down the hill and hitting it, and you didn't need to. All you needed was their perspective looking out to see this wall of ice coming, and you knew exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And it was more effective keeping it with their experience of the snowfall rather than having that cut away of the whole mountain coming down on top of them. And I think that's just smarter filmmaking because it keeps you with the characters and keeps you feeling how they would feel.
The other thing that did really well was the scene right before it, which the avalanche interrupts in Society, is the first moment in the film where everyone talks and laughs for the first time together, and they suddenly have a positive energy.
Yeah.
And that's very clever because no sooner had they got it than boom, they're hit with the avalanche that kills another 8 of them.
Yeah, it's tragic, but yeah, it is. It's that one last thing where they go, but no, it was very good, and so I think hats off to that's restrained direction, and I think there's lots of films that don't have that. They have got to show everything, and I think it's so much better to keep it with the perspective of the characters, and it also means you don't need a $350,000 visual effects shot of snow coming down the mountain,
No, the claustrophobic shot of the snow hitting the plane from the interior was way more effective. So there's an interesting comment here from Celeste, who I've also not seen on the channel before. Welcome. Thank you for popping by. subscribing even, and do check out the rest of the content. In that video, Numa's brother speaks about the movie, and also Marcelo's sister thanks Bayona for making the film. Is that in the making of? Did you watch that making of on Netflix, Matt? Is that on Netflix?
Yeah, it was, but it wasn't very long. It was just a small one.
Right. Was that? Do you remember? Was that in that or? Oh, here we go.
I don't think so. I don't.
Celeste has elaborated. It has English subtitles. Please watch it. It will help you understand what this movie means to the families.
No, this must be a bigger, a more extensive behind the scenes. I haven't seen this one yet. It sounds good.
Society.
I think
no
resilience behind the scenes.
Okay,
I think
we will check that out.
I think Bayona deserves the thanks. I think he really did right by the people in this one. I think he did it right by the people. And I think as someone who is a stickler for historical accuracy in movies, I think the fact that he went that route and not the Hollywood route, like Alive, I think he deserves all credit for doing this film right.
Absolutely.
He likes it. He likes his like 12mm lenses, doesn't he?
Yeah.
The lens, like some of those lens shots, they're so warped and wide. Like, woo. I mean, it's effective.
That was. I guess that was a lot of that was with the claustrophobia in the plane, right after the avalanche, right after the crash.
Yeah. I think it does give you that weird, distorted reality of how these characters feel. So it's quite effective.
Okay, I have found. I don't know if this is a trailer, or if this is just a short behind the scenes. But I think this is the link to which Celeste is referring to. I'm going to drop it in the chat. So Celeste, oh yes, she just said it's 5 minutes long. Thank you, Celeste. There's the link for it in the chat. Celeste, are you from South America? Are you somebody from the culture? I'd be very interested to know. If you come back and tell me you're one of the relatives, oh God, I'll have a whole heap of things to say. I mean, I remember one of the things that the film, both films did really well, is that moment where Nando and she's from Argentina. Nice to meet you. Nando and Roberto finally get to the top of that first mountain. And all they can see is more mountains.
That was heartbreaking.
But at the same time, I remember in Alive, that's the moment where Ethan Hawke says to Roberto, look at it, drink it in. You know, we're never going to see this again. Look how beautiful it is. It's amazing. And it's interesting when you look at the timeline of events, because they left the wreck on the 12th of December. Numa died on the 11th of December. So they left the wreck on day 61, right? And then they actually found two more bodies, one each day after, which actually isn't covered in the movie. And then it was 3 days later, so day 64, when Antonio Tintin, his nickname, Visntintin, returned to the fuselage, right? So, and then on the 20th is when Parado and Canessa encountered Sergio Catalan, who's the farmer. So the number of days between them leaving and finding someone from civilization was actually 8 days.
Wow.
It's really interesting to think. Imagine if two people had left and tried to make that same journey from day one of the crash, no one would have, but because they would have thought they were going to be rescued. But if they had done, let's say that they would have reached civilization by October 22nd.
They probably could have been rescued within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, the people who were killed in the avalanche would have survived for sure.
Yeah,
and then also
their problem is that they their problem is they wouldn't have survived 8 days because they didn't have that sleeping bag.
They didn't have the sleeping bag, and also the storms were worse.
That's right. So they would have had the elements would have killed them before they got out, and that they would have just frozen to death out there, and that's the problem. Because the thaw was beginning.
Here's another interesting thing, and I want to get the map up to find out where it is. But I remember in the book that if they had gone east, there was some sort of, I don't know if it was some kind of lodge or not a ski resort, but some kind of lodge that was literally only like a day and a half or 2 days hike away. That, you know, if they'd known it was there, they probably could have all got there and then held up there.
How frustrating to not know that.
Yeah, that's covered in the book. I'm gonna see if I can get onto Google Earth and we can actually have a look.
How frustrating to know that it was there. And just so frustrating that there was no hikers but it was the 70s. It's not like modern day.
No, and I mean it was very remote where they were. Very remote.
Yeah. I don't think nowadays if a plane went down, they probably have bloody satellite transponders and black boxes. They'd find them within 3 days. Modern technology, but not you got to the 70s were pretty antiquated, man. It's 50 years ago.
I'm trying to get it up on Google Earth, but it's been very annoying about it. Because I was hoping to get the actual crash site up, which is sort of south of Santiago, so we could look at it to see how far these things were. I mean, this is an interesting picture. I think this is now another thing that happened in reality was on the first day of rescue, the 2 helicopters were not enough to take everybody out.
Okay, yeah.
So 3 or 4 people had to stay one more night. So the 4 strongest volunteered to stay. But what happened was 2 people from the rescue team, medics, stayed with them.
Right.
And they brought a tent. And one thing that was really interesting, I remember reading in the book, which isn't covered in the film, and it would have been great if they had covered it, was that the people had been there so long, they were not aware of the pungent stench that was coming from inside the plane.
Oh my God, yeah.
So when the 4 that elected to stay behind, or 3, I think it might have been 3, said, hey, you know, you can come and sleep in the plane with us. You don't have to be in the tent. They were like, no, you're all right. And they put their tent quite far away from the plane.
Of course, they would have stunk.
Yeah, and also the corpses as well, you know.
Oh my God, yeah. It would have been rank.
Well, they would have been skeletal, but even
rank. I don't know if you've ever been camping. I've been camping before.
Yeah.
And I've gone 3 or 4 days without a shower. And like after 3 or 4 days of no shower, sleeping in a tent and roughing it, it is the worst feeling. So to think that these poor people did 72 or 73 days and nights like this, it's unbelievable. Like it truly is one of the most remarkable stories of survival. They should have died in no time in that environment. I still don't even know how they lasted one night, let alone every night freezing. It's
Well, I think because they were a rugby team, so extremely physically fit.
that really helped. I think
Yeah.
if they were a bunch of middle-aged people who are, just unfit or children, no.
Well, imagine if it had been a load of people going to Comic-Con. I mean,
a bunch of nerds like us.
yeah, you and me might have had a go at hiking out, but
that they were fit.
Three of them tried walking up the mountain in October. Yeah, not even without the appropriate layers of clothes or any planning. We can't share the video now, Celeste, because actually we could watch it, but not. We can't show it because this video will get ratioed by YouTube if we do.
But just leave a link for it in the comments so people who watch this can watch it.
We could watch it together when we come off quickly. It's only 5 minutes long.
So if it's only 5 minutes long, it might be the one I watched last night. But I watched it in bed, and I was, so it's a good one.
Just curious to see. Can you hear this? Can you hear that?
No.
Okay, good.
So anyway, well,
right.
Well, look, I probably should. I probably need to jump off anyway and get on with my day. But
all right, well, let's wrap it up. It's only I'll look at that after.
Yeah.
Hey, Darth Vader, good to see you.
Hey, Darth. What would you give? What would you give Alive out of 10? What would you give Society of the Snow out of 10?
I think when Alive came out at the time, I gave it 9 out of 10. Really liked it. Couldn't find a lot of fault in it. But then Alive made me go and buy the book.
Yeah.
In the book, of course, there's a lot more. I'm really glad that they didn't go for that kind of montage at the end where, Ethan Hawke and Josh Hamilton are kind of running through the snow and he's pointing and they arrived at the water and then that was it. And the next thing you hear the helicopters coming. You had the scene where they saw the guy and the guy got pen and paper and threw it in the rock. That all happened.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that you had the scene of the meeting in the hut and you turn around and then all of that aftermath stuff was great. I could have had another 10 minutes of that. So I reckon Society of the Snow is now probably the 9 out of 10 and Alive is probably an 8.
Yeah.
I think in terms of realism, telling the story. Celeste says Alive misrepresents our culture. Yeah, I mean, Alive is it's half an hour running time less.
Yeah.
It's very
very Hollywoodized, very Americanized.
Very American. But at the time, if you think about no streaming platforms available, there wasn't a huge interest in foreign films, foreign cinema that there is now, nor were there the platforms to distribute those films. Not many cinema chains would even take foreign films for mass distribution in the American market.
No, they wouldn't. Audiences in 1993 would not have, the larger audiences would not have accepted a subtitled film.
Well, in America, in Europe,
in America, of course, yeah. We're talking about America, and it was made for Americans.
So, I mean, that was the best version of that story that you were going to get at that time.
Yeah,
I would say.
And leaving those things aside, if we judge it on its merits as a movie, leaving aside cultural representation and all that, I think if we just judge it on its own merits as a movie, I think I would agree. I would put it at 7.5, which was probably my original score anyway when I saw it about 10 years ago.
Right.
I think it's a 7.5 out of 10. Very solid, very good. Not brilliant, but just solid. Very enjoyable, very good. I think for me, Society is 9 out of 10.
Yeah. Despite the slightly
Yeah, if they had got that beginning right, I would have given it a 10 out of 10. If they had just got the front end, the editing and everything was too jarring at the beginning. If they'd got that right, I would have given it a 10.
Right.
But I would say, I would recommend, if you want to know about, if you don't know anything about this story, watch Society of the Snow. That's the one you should watch. Definitely, that should be the one.
Yeah, I suppose, especially if you want.
Yeah, if you want if you want to see the proper version of the story, that's the one to see. Definitely, not Alive. However, if you're squeamish, if you find movies extremely traumatic to watch, if you're a very sensitive viewer, but you still want to see this film, I'd say then go and watch Alive because it's a bit more palatable. It's not as traumatic. Because Society of the Snow did plague my dreams, and I went to sleep with, lots of turmoil emotions, because it is a very traumatic, a miserable movie at times to have to see these poor people go through what they went through. So,
Right.
and the fact that it can have that kind of effect, I think it's very good, and definitely Bayona's best movie to date that I've seen of his filmography.
There's an interesting video on YouTube that shows you the crash site and also then the route that they walked out. Sort of like someone's done a thing via Google Earth, which is really what I was hoping to do here. But yeah, so you can see the distance they went and all that kind of stuff. That's worth checking out as well. I'll do the guy solid and just pop that on there. Celeste, I will be watching that video link. I'll be watching it as soon as we go off the air. I think Matt's actually already seen it.
Yeah, I think I've seen that. I'll probably watch it again though, because I think it's worth.
Yeah.
I'd like to watch it with a fresh mind. I watched it at 1 o'clock in the morning when I was a bit.
Yeah,
after seeing the film.
I had heard that most of the victims' families were not very happy with Alive. I don't.
I think this film should set that straight.
Yeah.
For sure. And I watched it because I was most interested in just seeing how the hell they pulled the movie off. I wanted to see what was visual effects. But again, that's my director brain, just wanting to know how they pulled it off, because it as a filmmaking feat, it's quite spectacular.
Yeah, we never mentioned Ilana Douglas, who's in Alive. Very young Ilana Douglas, who went on to do. Yeah, she did a number of films with Scorsese. She plays the rape victim in Cape Fear with Robert De Niro. She plays Iliana, the one who survives the crash with her husband.
But the avalanche that dies in the avalanche.
They do a lot more with her character in Alive, actually.
They do. I remember her being a bit. They did a lot. In fact, they did a lot more with the two girls in Alive than they did in Society, which is unusual for today. You would think that today they would up those two, because they would up those feminine roles for Society.
Yeah, you would think that.
Because they were quite minimal in. They weren't not there, but they were minimal. Hey, Copa Ex Machina, hello.
She wasn't the mother to the survivors in the same way.
No, that she was present, but she was not. She was present, but she was not a big presence.
It's not a criticism of the movie, but again,
but they had a lot of characters to. They had a lot of characters to deal with.
I think they played down those more Hollywood-esque moments and were probably keen not to. Yeah. Replicate stuff from Alive that's either inaccurate or just big it up. So Matt, what you got coming up? What are you working on at the moment?
Well, I'm working on moving from Melbourne to South Australia, and that takes up most of my time. It's moving my life to another state, so that's.
What about films that you're working on?
Films, not much because of the move, but I do have a script that I'm trying to get financed at the moment, and I'm also doing some very early prep for a documentary that I want to make. That'll probably take me in the next 2 or 3 years to actually produce, but a documentary.
Blimey.
So, yeah, so I've got a couple of things in the wings, but I'm really just waiting for the finance for the feature film to come through. So it's a bit of a
Fantastic.
waiting game.
Well, look forward to having you back on the channel again real soon. Sorry
No
to my
worries.
viewers that I'm coughing so much, but I am still getting over pneumonia. Coper's saying he misses Matt's walls of DVDs, Blu-rays. I have in the background. I feel lost.
Yeah, sorry, they will be there. They will be. I don't know. Well, you probably won't see them for a while. I'm afraid I will. When I move to another place, they won't be behind me. So you will see them maybe in about 6 months' time. They'll be back.
Okay, guys. So just to remind you, I've got lots of stuff on the channel next week. I have got 2, 3. I think I've got 3 industry interviews in January already confirmed. We have one with director Adrian Tay, who's the director of Malbat, which is currently available on Netflix. That's another movie about the Black Hawk Down incident from a totally different perspective. You should watch it. It's very good. I have actor, oh my God, Timothy Bentic coming on, Tim Bentic. We were originally going to interview him in December, but he had an injury, so he had to postpone. So he's coming on. I've got Emmanuel Asogwe, who is the founder of the British Urban Film Festival. He is on next Wednesday. So God, I hope my voice is better by then. So quite a lot coming up on the channel, along with an in-depth review of Shogun with Richard Chamberlain and getting ready for the new version of Shogun that's dropping soon. I'm also got a big stream coming up about Masters of the Air and all the usual other things, plus the Nielsen ratings every Tuesday at 10 p.m. UK, 5 p.m. East Coast. We'll try and get Matt on a couple of episodes of that if we can. Until then, I think that's time for us to sign off before I cough all over everybody.
And if those of you who have not seen my film, The Cost.
Yeah, where can we see that? Where can we see The Cost?
Well, you can see The Cost on 365 if you're international. If you're in Australia, New Zealand, you can see it on Amazon Prime, Google Play, those sorts of regular places. But for those of you in the rest of the world, until it gets released in your zone, you'll have to find it on the high seas. So
you're the director. You want people to watch it on Amazon, surely?
Well, they can't watch it on Amazon. It's not available on Amazon. So, or you can wait if you're in the US or whatever. You can in UK, you can wait until March. It comes out in March in those places. So,
Okay.
yeah. So
check out Matt's film.
Check out the trailer as well and put it on your to watch list.
All right. Okay. Well, look, thanks everybody for watching. Celeste, welcome to the channel for the first time. Lovely to have you on. Thank you very much for your comments. Do appreciate and took on board what you were saying.
Yes, very good to hear from someone who's actually more closely linked and related to the people in the story.
Indeed. Right, until next time, we'll see you all again real soon.
Okay, ciao.